Craig.
Hey, I'm Justin.
And today we're going to talk about finding a good cruise cabin. So that's always a big thing, I think, when you're booking a cruise. You want to make sure you've got a nice room to stay in, and that, I think it's not going to be too noisy. That's a big thing for us, right?
And be aware of what you want to be close to.
Yeah.
Stairs, lifts,
Yeah,
laundry.
absolutely. And you don't always want to be too close to those things, right?
No.
So sometimes when you're really close to a lift, you might have people coming out of that lift, coming in late at night after a few drinks, and they can be quite loud. So
And the laundry too, because there's a lot of people trying to do laundry and they're quite often queued up.
Yeah. So there's a few things that we always look for when we're booking a cabin. So most often we'll book our own cabin. We don't do the guaranteed cabin. And one of the reasons for that is there's certain parts of the ship I actually want to avoid. So that's what we're going to talk about today. One of the things I like to avoid is being under a pool deck or being under the horizon court, so the buffet. And the reason for that is they set up the pool deck quite early in the morning, so they'll be dragging the pool chairs around. You also oftentimes have flow over seating from the horizon court, so from the buffet. And that flow over seating, you've got people sitting there eating, they might be up there for breakfast. If you're trying to have a lie-in, you'll have them scraping the chairs overhead.
We've had that.
Same thing in the buffet. So you want to avoid the buffet because not only do you have them, people with that, pulling their seats out or pushing them back in, you also have the crew walking around with trolleys. And this is how we learnt this lesson. We were under the buffet, and although we couldn't feel the chairs, we couldn't hear the chairs, we could hear this trolley just getting rolled around almost 24 hours a day, or at least it felt like it. So that was one of the reasons we sort of chose to be away from that on future cruises. Another thing we like to avoid is being above an entertainment venue, right? So if you think about the Princess Theatre, if you've ever been into the theatre, there's these enormous banks of speakers and it's quite loud in there. I don't want to be trying to sleep because we go to bed fairly early, right? So I don't want to be trying to sleep when the late shows are going on or they're doing rehearsals or anything like that, because they'll often do rehearsals late at night. So I want to avoid that. I don't want to be too close to like the casino. The casinos run pretty late and just a bleed through noise from there. So how can you actually tell where your cabin's going to be or what's around your cabin? So I wanted to have a look at deck plans. So I've chosen to have a look at the Princess website. We're going to have a look at that. And we're going to have a look at how you can find deck plans and then how you can navigate it so you know what cabin you're looking for and that sort of thing. Okay, so here we are on the Princess website, so simply princess.com, and we're going to go down and have a look. We've already decided on our itinerary, but we want to have a look at the ship that we're going to book. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom to Ships and Experience, and I'm going to hit Ships. So on here, we can see a list of all the different ships in the Princess fleet. So we're going to find the one that we're going to cruise on. So our next cruise on Princess is actually the Discovery Princess. So I'm going to click on that one. And that's going to bring up a whole heap of information about the ship itself. So we can see here so much to discover, what you can do on there, what sort of cruises it does. We can see, what some cruise itineraries in there. We can see the dining options, so that's a really good way to be able to see what sort of dining you'll be able to do on the cruise ship. Some cruise ships have an international cafe. They don't all have that, so having a look for that if you're trying to choose a ship can be quite advantageous. The international cafe is a cafe that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Usually located in the Piazza, although I think we've seen it in a different location on a couple of different ships, or at least one different ship. But, everything that's in there is complimentary other than coffee and specialty drinks. But, if you have a hankering for a snack in the middle of the night, you can go down to the International Cafe. So good to know if that's there. You can have a look at the different culinary experiences on there. Scrolling past, we can see what sort of entertainment venues are on the ship. You can have a look at the different sorts of bars. So still scrolling down, you can see the different sorts of staterooms. So on this one, we can see there's suites, but there's also your inside cabins, your balconies. Most ships, not all ships, have ocean view cabins as well. So an ocean view cabin is where you've got a window to look out to sea. We can see about the Lotus Spa. We can see about kids, families, the sort of accommodations and the recreational activities available. You can have a look at some numbers. I usually find this is pretty interesting. So Discovery Princess, around 3,660 guests. That's quite a few people in one place. You can see that it launched or had its first cruise there in March in 2022. So she's a fairly new ship. But what we're looking for though is the deck plans. So if we clicked up the top there on the banner beside the Book Now button, click on deck plans, and that's going to take us to a special part of the website which only has the deck plans. So what you want to do is have an idea of the sort of deck you want to go to. So if I click on Deck 7 Promenade, that Promenade deck indicates that this is the deck where you can walk around the ship. Bearing in mind, not all ships, and by the look of it, this Discovery Princess is one, you can't always walk all the way around the ship. So you can't always get to the front of the ship or the back of the ship or both, but that's fine. So we will generally go somewhere around Deck 9, 10, 11. Generally speaking, those are the ones that are going to have decks above and below. So for this instance, I'm going to choose Deck 10 because we can be pretty sure it's in the middle. I personally like the front of the ship. Do you like the front or the back?
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah. So we'll usually go forward. So the front of the ship, somewhere around the area you can see there, C104 through maybe C238. So let's say, for example, we're going to look at booking C132. So I'll just click on that so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So we can see it's a balcony cabin. It's in the forward part of the ship, so towards the front on Deck 10, with a shower. So some, especially in a mini suite or a full suite, they'll have a bathtub with a shower over it. It's not a connecting room cabin, so I always look for a cabin that isn't connecting, because oftentimes there's some noise bleed through under the door if it's a connecting cabin, and it'll tell you approximate square footage in there as well. And if you understand square footage, that's great. But if we're looking at C132, so I'll go back to the deck plan. I'm going to scroll up a little bit because what I want to do is actually check the deck below it. And I'm going to go and look at Deck 9 and look at about the same area on that ship. So we can see all the way along there on that same side, there's all cabins. So that feels pretty good to me. I'm going to stick around that area because underneath all I'm going to have is cabins. Then I'm going to go up to 11, so the deck above, and just check that I've only got cabins above me as well. Yep, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I've only got cabins above me there as well. So then I'm going to go back to my Deck 10 because the other thing I want to check is how close am I to stairs? How close am I to any potential crew-only areas, things like that. So when I look at it there, so my 132, I can walk that far down to the elevators. So the elevators are there at the bottom of the screen. And I'm not going to have a lot of through traffic there because there's only cabins past me and maybe a crew-only area between C102 and C101. So I'm pretty happy with that location. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into what to look for when you're looking for a cabin. Obviously, if you've got mobility issues, you want to have a look at other things there as well. You want to have a look at, is the cabin that you're looking at going to be accessible? So is the door going to be big enough? Is the bathroom big enough? All that sort of stuff. You also want to probably be a little bit closer to the elevators in the example we've just used. So if we look at C214, that looks like a slightly wider cabin. But you know, you can see if you have a look on the website, there are accessible cabins as well. Bearing in mind that on the ship you've usually got 3 elevator banks. You've usually got a forward elevator, midship elevator, and one at the aft, so at the back. So we can see there's 3. The other thing that you mentioned before was a laundromat. So with this particular cabin, where we were looking at C132, we'd have to walk all the way to the aft to be able to do laundry. So that might be a consideration for you there as well. The other thing to note, so on the screen there, you can see the shape of the ship. So jutting out from about C14 to C428, we've got a bit of a bump out there. So what that is on this particular ship, they have part of the ship on the upper deck that actually juts out over the ship, and it's got a glass floor. One side's got a bar on it, the other side is just a walkway. From there, they can actually see down onto your deck. So if you don't want people to actually be looking down onto your deck, that might be something to consider as well. bearing in mind there are cameras everywhere, so you're not really doing anything out there you don't want to be seen anyway. But hopefully that gives you some hints and tips on how to look for a cabin. We'll do another video on the different cabin types. If you have a look at the channel, we've also got a couple of room tours as well for a couple of different ships, but there's more of those coming. We've got another, I think, 5 cruises booked at the moment. So there's a few, and we'll be sure to do some other room tours for those as well. If you like this video, give it a like, give the channel a subscribe. It does help the channel grow because it helps the algorithm to know that this has been a decent video for you to watch and you got something out of it as well. Until next time, we'll talk to you then.